When a relationship goes through something traumatic, it will either bring you closer or tear you apart. My name is Amanda Rangel, and I have been a life coach for almost 17 years now. And my husband, Jeremiah, has been a coach for 26 years. And I want to share a story with you about something traumatic that happened in our relationship that ultimately helped us to become stronger because we have the tools and the resources and the divine connection that we stayed connected to. So I want to share this story with you right now in this experience in case you are in a place where you're at a breaking point and you're not sure exactly what to do. You're not sure how to help yourself or help your spouse, and you're just needing an extra boost of resources, connection, and possibility. After many years, it seemed that the answer was that we would not have children, until one day it was brought to my attention that there were two little children who were in a very bad situation and were needing parents. They needed a home. They were going to be up for adoption. They were currently in the foster care system, being taken care of by their lovely grandparents, actually. But the grandparents, just understanding some of their own limitations, wanted to start to look for a younger couple who would be able to really create like a kinship, start by hanging out, and then eventually becoming foster parents and adopting these two children. There's a little boy who's 4 years old and a little girl who's 2 years old. His name started with a J. My husband's Jeremiah starts with a J. Her name started with an A. My name starts with an A. They were both half Mexican. Myself and my husband are both half Mexican. So everything seemed like it was really divinely falling into place. And we thought, oh my goodness, could this actually be it? Now, nothing in our lives has ever been traditional for myself or my husband, Jeremiah. So this process started out completely untraditional, where we just went directly to the grandparents. The grandparents directly met us, and we started to meet the children. We had pontoon day out on the lake. We got to play with them, hold them, get to know their personalities. We could feel and see that the little girl, 2 years old, she didn't have as much trauma stored in her body. And in her mind, she just was this bright-eyed, just shiny, glowy little girl, laughter, chubby, so cute. We fell in love immediately. There's just a place in our hearts for both of them. And the little boy, we could tell he was a little bit older and he had been through some things. Obviously, if you're in a place where CPS is involved, it's because there's often just issues. And so he had been through some of that, and we could feel and see that. Very sweet, just absolutely super adorable, lovable little boy. And we had kind of started with our skills as coaches and started to realize what we could do to help to heal some of that stuff with him if we were to become his parents, so that he didn't have to hold on to some of that anger and some of that stuff for the rest of his life, where we could actually work through it with him and, hopefully be the best parents and best choice for them. So our hearts were completely opened, and we started rearranging our house, rearranging our space. The grandparents were talking with multiple couples, and they had told us that they really picked us. They hoped that overall, because the children were in the state CPS system, they would have the final say, but they were going to really be rooting for us and putting their advocacy behind us becoming the children's parents. So it felt like it was all moving forward. We had started classes, all of this stuff. And at, I would say, the last minute, but along the process, the paternal aunt stepped in and said that she wanted the children. And because of the way that the state works, they decided that right away she would get the children. At that time, there were red flags for myself and Jeremiah, as well as the grandparents, because this woman seemed to have multiple children from multiple fathers and didn't really seem like if she was in a great place to take on 2 more children in a house full that was already quite full and be able to give them the care and the attention that they really needed. So Jeremiah and I were very heartbroken. Sorry. Okay, got the tissue now. But we knew that we needed to just continue to trust the process, and there was really not much that we could do. So we started our own healing, that space in our hearts that we had created, and just felt like we were trusting the process and reverting back to kind of before we had met them, what were our goals? What were we focused on before we had considered, 2 car seats in the back of our car, kind of a thing. So we just moved on. We had to, the communication with the grandparents stopped because they were obviously following the children, and many years went by. We'd talk about them, say, oh, if they were here, they would be experiencing this right now, that kind of thing, in a really healed way. But at the same time, it's just like, once there's that space in your heart, it doesn't go away. So well, fast forward many years later, and my husband and I, we moved across the country, and the thought of the kids just popped up in my mind. And so I went and I looked up the grandmother on Facebook, and to my surprise, I saw that the little girl, there was like a memorial, the posts where I'm so sorry and that type of thing. So of course, I looked into what was going on. I was really confused. I was hoping to open it up and see just maybe photos of them thriving and happy and being awesome. And the little girl had passed away. And so I looked into it, and it turns out that the woman that they were given to, who was their aunt, was charged with murder. Within a year after she received custody of them, she had been harming the little girl, starving her, tying her up. And there's news articles that I read on it, which go into detail that I don't necessarily need to discuss here, but she went from like the 95th percentile in weight down to like the 10th or 5th percentile within a very, very short time span. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to trust. So how do you trust the process, right? When a little child that could have been your daughter ends up being starved and tortured to death by the person that the state of Minnesota gave her to instead of us. And if you know anything about us personally, I love food. There's such an abundance. One of the reasons we moved to Texas was to start a little farm to be able to grow organic food, meet ranchers, and be able to buy good, high-quality food in a time when, things were kind of rocky back in 2020, 2021. So yeah, that whole process started then. I started going back and looking and see, well, what was I doing during the times that she was bound up and to her bed and not getting food? Seeing, was I going out to restaurants? What was I doing? Well, she wasn't being taken care of the way she should have been and the way she deserved. So I obviously still get really emotional talking about it. And I've come a long way in that, for sure, using the tools and the resources that I have for healing. Healing there's so many multiple levels to it, right? There's the physical world, where initially there's sadness, but then it switched to anger and revenge, rage. Like, who are these people who did this? And the dark thoughts starting coming in, feeling like they deserved to have the same done to them of what they did to her. But I saw that for what it was right away, based off of the work that I've been doing and have done. Because even allowing a crack of those dark thoughts to come through would lower my vibration, right? And that's exactly what the devil wants, is for people to go low, to get hurt, to feel hurt, and allow that crack of divisive energy in, start to listen to the devil on their shoulder instead of breathing, being resourceful, leaning in on God, trying to understand things that aren't understandable. So a huge bunch of emotions obviously came up, and talking with Jeremiah about it, and as we processed it, we printed out some photos that we had of her and created like a little special space in our house where we would light a candle for her soul every day, and bring her food, pray for her comfort in heaven with where she is. Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff, right, that can make you stronger, bring you closer, or if you allow those divisive thoughts and that lower vibration energy to come in, that it wants to stick, right? In the 3D world, we have the choice of listening to the angels or listening to the devil. And I pushed through that, seeing it for what it was. But yeah, I haven't talked about this process, especially, opening up and sharing it. But in prayer, in like morning prayer, I was told to share the story and share what's possible when it comes to healing. And there can still be emotions with healing, right? Don't become like a robot, deadpanned, kind of detached or disassociated. A lot of times people will disassociate. If they come to it, it just becomes compartmentalized and put off to the side. You can't talk about emotions. That's one way that relationships will start to fall apart. Communication isn't open and you're not able to talk about it or be able to find the words. So we did all the talking about it. And on the physical level, there's, the 3D world of there are these people who caused harm and coming to forgiveness for that. In the psychological world, like what I did about looking at my calendar, going back and seeing, was I eating out at restaurants while she was starving, eating crayons and rocks to try to survive? What was I doing while that was happening? That's in the psychological world, and I could have beat myself up there for a really, really long time, even though it was out of my hands. And so healing in the psychological world helps to remove those internal representations and stop all of the what ifs, because the what ifs will go on forever, right? Because the mind and the ego will, what if a person to death if they allow it? And then the spiritual world, doing the work in the spiritual world is really connecting to her soul and feeling her, and in some ways kind of, it's not time traveling exactly, but going back to that space of like sending her love, asking God to surround her so that she felt peace in those moments where there was clearly suffering occurring. And that's what this type of coaching and healing is really all about, is integrating between the physical world, the psychological world, and the spiritual world so that there can be a total healing and moving forward. I know this work is really powerful, and it's not just because I help other people with it, right? We all have our maps of the world, and we experience what we experience inside of our map. And then if something happens outside of the map, it's outside of our experience, it's up to us to expand then and include those experiences and integrate them in a way that's in alignment with who we really are. And we get to choose, right? We get to choose if we're going to stay connected in God through experiences, or if we're going to allow the negativity and the devil and those demons to come into the physical world, the psychological world, and the spiritual world. Like, we get to decide. And that's what this coaching and healing is all about, that I live every day with the experiences that I have. And then when I do that, I'm able to help other people through similar things in their own unique way, right? Because if I've expanded out and accepted God and the divine, the light, universe, whatever you call it, just call it, right? Expand out into that and create a bigger lighthouse. If I can become a bigger lighthouse, I can help to shine that out to people who need it the most. And so that is what I was really called to share with you all today. I hope that helps if you're going through something where you could use somebody who has an outside perspective that can support you through it, right? And not go down in the hole with you. For my clients, when they have tears, I don't go down into tears with them. I'm able to hold a space because I've done that healing work on my own in my own life. So I can actually put a ladder down if they feel like they're in a hole, reach my hand down and help them climb up. That's what this is all about, you guys. That's what life is all about, I feel personally, and this is what I'm called to do every single day. If you'd like to reach out, definitely you can. I'm here to chat. I do coaching and also teach people how to work through and integrate this process in your own personal life as well.